Our hot topic.
Truth, lies, shenanigans.
All right, every show our hosts bring you hot topics they want to share. We'll ask them, is it truth, lies, or shenanigans? Our panel will talk about it for a bit until our time is up. Then we'll go to our audience for any questions or comments. And of course, you've been commenting away already, so we'll be keeping an eye on more comments as we talk about this topic, since we only have one hot topic for today. Derek Chauvin, killer of George Floyd, finally found guilty on all 3 counts. Let's roll the tape.
County of Hennepin, State of Minnesota plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, defendant. Verdict count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. Third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. Verdict count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m.
Handcuffs.
We're adjourned.
Adjourn. Take him out in handcuffs. That's what I'm talking about. So, my question to you guys, what was your initial feelings or thoughts when you saw the verdict? I mean, because it came suddenly. You know, I know they went to deliberate, and then all of a sudden we got a verdict like 10 hours later, next day. So they came back pretty quickly. Let's start with Robbie Rock. What were you feeling?
Well, Joe and I were preparing dinner. We were just putting around in the kitchen, and when they started the deliberations, when the judge started speaking and just laying down the sentence, it was I was holding my breath with each and every charge that was being laid, and then it was just kind of like, okay, good, guilty. Okay, good, guilty. And then with the third guilty, then it's just kind of like, okay, there was a sense of relief that justice was served. Doesn't change anything, and it, like you alluded to earlier, just hope that this would be a catalyst for a lot of change in U.S. society as far as their policing structure, their how people are policed. Period. So it was definitely some relief because I'm I'm a math guy, so
Yep.
it's either guilty or not guilty. And when my mind kind of trailed off into the not guilty realm of things, I completely lost my train of thought. I just kind of became lost in that little bubble and had to look over at my wife and was like, what was I doing? You were getting a light bulb. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, I was going to the other room to grab a light bulb because as soon as my mind wandered there, I just got kind of lost in that abyss. What if? So I'm glad that they got it right, and there's a sense of justice being served.
Yeah. I just want to point out Angela Cherie from the Ever Evolving podcast is joining in. Says he was really confused when he got those guilty pleas.
He looked shell-shocked, right?
Yeah, definitely. All right, Gianni Storm, what were your feelings? What were your initial feelings?
When I heard the news, I was actually on Instagram Live with Olivia and you.
Yeah.
And it was I wanted to be surprised, but I wasn't, because I felt like this was something everybody saw, right? This was something that I feel like if it weren't for physical video evidence and all of those witnesses, I think we would be speaking about a different trial. But I felt like this is supposed to happen. This is justice. Okay, finally they're honoring. So that was my initial thought, and then it brought me to a bunch of other thoughts, like, because you get on the internet and you want to see other people's opinions and what they think about it, and a lot of people are saying things like I can breathe now or something like that, and a lot of people are saying other things like is this really going to put a stop to things? Or because then somebody passed away right after by police, somebody else was killed. So but without being a Debbie Downer, I think initially I felt relief.
Yeah.
I just felt like finally.
And I just want to, because I was feeling the same way, but I don't know, it was weird for me. And I spoke to Robbie about this pre-show, but it was weird for me. I wasn't as like happy. I mean, I was happy that we had the right verdict, but I don't know that I had the same enthusiasm as, say, for example, when Trump was kicked out of office. I don't know. I felt a bigger sense of relief. And part of it for me, I think, is because not a whole lot has completely changed yet. Because we're still seeing
Yeah.
the videos. George Floyd happened a year ago, and we're getting videos like every day now that we're talking about on the show. Where we're seeing the same stuff going on. Just you know, maybe they didn't die this time, or they are dying as well. So, but I am glad they got it right. The relief that I did feel was thank God that because the country would have popped off. We've said it a few times on this show. There's no question because I mean, if you can't get a guilty verdict from those videos, there's something wrong. And yeah, we would have had to say something about it. Lizzie?
Um, like everyone, I was relieved, but I wasn't surprised by
I
the
wasn't
verdict,
either.
especially given that it was less than 12 hours. We heard that not only was it less than 12 hours, it was a unanimous decision, and that the jury had no questions. They had no questions about anything that they saw, any testimony, any lack of testimony, anything that was presented to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it made me think, okay, and given the makeup of the jury, there were 6 white people on the jury, 4 black people on the jury, and then 2 other persons of color. And so it was and men and women on the jury. And so, given that it was diverse, given that it seemed like it didn't take them any time to figure out, to see what we all saw, I wasn't surprised. I was happy that, in this case, there was some form of accountability. However, um, I'm not that optimistic for, you know, immediate change. I mean, this is one case that happened in Minnesota. We still have
Mhm.
Dante Wright after this. And just because there may be change within the Minnesota Police Department doesn't mean any change is going to happen in the other 49 states here. Each
Right.
state is responsible for its own police department. And so this again speaks to, I think, um, a nationwide problem that isn't going to be solved overnight. It's not going to be
No.
solved by just one case. I appreciate that the Floyd family could sleep a bit more comfortably last night. Of course, they don't get their loved one back at all, and nothing will ever change that. But at least, they can take a breath of fresh air, if you will. But there's still a lot of work to be done because you still have a lot of people in law enforcement
Mm-hmm.
who don't think that, Derek Chauvin did anything wrong.
Yeah.
You still have a lot of people in law enforcement or people who support Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter or people who are racist, part of, the Proud Boys or white supremacists who think that, George Floyd got what he deserved
Yeah.
or that, if we all, not we all, but if Black people just comply. So I'm happy for this case. I'm happy for this case. I'm happy for the people of Minnesota because, I have friends who are in Minnesota and everyone was on edge there, not just the Black community. Everyone was on edge there thinking about what if he gets off
What's
because we
next?
all know what would have happened.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, there's
It
no
would have
question.
been wide chaos. So I'm happy at least for the people of Minnesota that for one night, at least, they got a little bit of comfort,
Yeah.
at least one night.
As
But we still
expected.
have
Mhm.
Okay.
we still have a lot of work to do.
A
We
lot of
still have
work
a
to
lot
do.
of work to do.
When choosing the jury, did the jury members have to be people that didn't know about George Floyd and didn't know about
They
the case
tried.
at all, or
They
was
tried
it
to find people
okay?
like that.
I mean, as best they could, like, this was a nationwide
It
story,
was
so it was almost impossible to find someone who didn't have any, prior knowledge of it. And the fact that they still had, the trial in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, suggests that, they knew no matter where they took this, there would still be people who were aware of what happened that
yeah.
day. Um,
Now, Lizzie,
I think,
this was an international story because I mean, when everything happened, I mean, there were protests all around the world. There was outcry all
Yeah.
around the world about what was happening. So I'm sure that there's a lot of relief. There's that sigh of relief around the world today also.
Yeah. So let's get to some of these comments online real quick. There's a bunch actually just came in. So Jacqueline Robinson said, "My stomach flipped and my heart pounded. I figured there was a hung jury, but I was still stressed until the verdict was read." Ernest Cooper said, "It's sad we're grateful for the crumbs. It should never have been a guess for us." It's true.
Mhm.
Yeah.
George
Yeah.
Fournier, as a lawyer, a short jury deliberation is almost always indicative of a guilty verdict, but I was shocked he was found guilty on all three counts. This was a pleasant surprise. Um, Ernest Cooper says,
And
"Not
denied
justice,
bail.
but closure and accountability. Justice should be systemic."
Mhm.
Sherry Blaine Priest, "Glad it was a short deliberation and justice was served, and we need to be sure there is change coming. We need to keep everyone accountable." And then my dad had a comment, "Nobody is born racist. Racism is taught. Proof goes to delivery room at any hospital. Therefore, education is the true solution to a racial problem. There's no quick fix for racism. It's not an American problem, it's a worldwide problem.
Yeah.
Education is the answer."
One thing that I think was key for the jurors in this being a very quick deliberation was the number of Derek Chauvin's fellow police officers who
Oh, yeah.
testified that this is not how we were trained, even if they weren't testifying truthfully, even if they were testifying because they knew what the consequences were of him getting off. The fact that you had people on the stand who were fellow police officers who were saying, this is not how we do it. 9 minutes, almost 9.5, 10 minutes on someone's neck like that is unacceptable. And it's not,
Yeah.
something that we would assume that any person would survive. And I think that carried a lot of weight with the jury. I think if those people had not testified, if it had just been, his girlfriend or a couple of people that were bystanders, witnesses, I think it wouldn't have weighed as heavy. But these were fellow blue officers who were just like, nah, man, nah, we can't be down for this.
Yeah.
And I think that heavily. I think that weighed heavily.
That makes me ask the question, what do you guys think was kind of like that? I know everything throughout the trial that the prosecutors had brought kind of won the, well, not won, but found him guilty. But what do you guys think was the icing on the cake? Was it the medical exam? Was it the fact that his fellow police officers testified? Was it the bystanders? Do you guys think that anything was a little bit more helpful in that, or all of
I
that
think it came
together?
down to the video. I mean,
I think the video, because very rarely do we see someone have the life need out of them. Normally,
Yeah.
we hear stories about police brutality, deaths as a result of police brutality, murders, criminal murders, etc. But very rarely do we see it like that, broken down like that, step by step by step. But also, I think, in
Yeah.
addition to the police testimony, Gianni, I think the EMT officer who was standing there begging them to let her help him and saying, this is not how we do things, begging Chauvin to get his knee off of him, begging him to check his pulse, and to have her testify and hold true and be steadfast in what she saw. I think that weighed a lot. I think that weighed a lot with the
yeah.
jury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that have come out of that. So we had the Maxine Waters issue, obviously. And I know Lizzie, you can probably go into that better than I can. But we had Maxine Waters sit up there trying to basically pull a Trump. Um, can you explain
And
kind of what happened with that?
um, so Maxine Waters, she is a member of Congress. We like to call her Auntie Maxine. And normally she is very witty and very on point with her when she's calling out injustice. I think she missed the mark on this particular moment
Yeah.
because this was this was once the jury got the case, so they were deliberating, and she made a comment about how that they should stay in protesters should stay in the street, which is fine. You want to encourage people, to protest. But then she said that if Derek, I keep wanting to call him George, if Derek Chauvin was acquitted, that they should be confrontational, that they should not only protest, but they should be confrontational. And I'm just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That is along the lines of the rhetoric that Donald Trump was
Insurrection.
speaking.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you.
It's one thing if the four of us are saying that.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't elected officials.
Right.
We don't have a huge national public platform. The people aren't looking to us to set an example. But you can't be a member of Congress. You can't be the president, the leader of the free world, and encouraging people that listen to you to go to the Capitol. To he didn't say storm the Capitol, and that's another thing because people were kind of going back and forth about what Trump's exact words were. He did use the word fight, and he did tell them to go to the Capitol, but it's a matter of semantics.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know what he meant.
Yeah.
We all know what Maxine Waters meant.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
you got to be careful with the language that you use. And the same
Especially,
way that
yeah,
Trump
as
was
a
impeached,
politician,
he's censured.
I think she should be
He's censored,
censored too.
you
Unfortunately,
know.
Absolutely.
it didn't happen because the Democrats blocked the Republicans did try to censor her, but the Democrats blocked it. But I agree. I would have supported a censure of Maxine Waters because even if she made a mistake, it's okay. You made a mistake. You need to be held accountable for your mistake. I mean,
Did
if
she
you're
say that
right,
if the verdict was not guilty for people to storm the Capitol? Well, not those
well,
words, but
she
is
said
that
to
what
be
she
more
implied?
confrontational was her
That
exact
be
word.
more educational. And again, if you look up the word, again, it's semantics. People want to break down. Well, she didn't exactly say go fight. Well, but look up what confrontational means. It's an aggressive form of dealing with someone.
Hmm.
You're telling someone not to just go and protest. You're saying, get up in their face, confront them. Well, what do you think is going to happen if you, as a protester, goes and confronts police officers?
You're going to get
There's going to be
Yeah.
an equal and appropriate response.
there's going to be a clash. And think about this: we are coming off of the heels the week before the jury deliberated on this particular case. There was a lot of civil unrest.
Hmm.
And I don't want to say riots, but a lot of civil unrest and violence in Minnesota as a result of the Dante Wright murder.
Yep,
So you're already talking about a community that is on edge. It was not the right choice of words.
it was.
It was not the right rhetoric at all. Point blank, period.
I want to say Mike Winter said not exactly pulling a Trump in this context. Insightful speech that certainly could have been better, but nowhere near context of Trump and the other violent rhetoric in which Trump spoke. I will say, I
But it
will
is in the
agree. I will
context.
agree. I'll agree in the
It
sense
is.
that Trump was doing it a lot leading up to it. I mean, Trump was doing it over months of a period of time. It wasn't like a random comment. It was Trump had been making these comments and meeting with the Proud Boys and things like that. And he'd been making these comments for months. And just before the rally, I mean, just before the storming of the Capitol, he held that rally where he was relatively clear. So it is very different. I'd agree with that in the sense that it's different like that. Robbie, do you have any other thoughts?
No, it's I mean for me as a Caucasian Canadian, it's culturally I can't connect with it, but I felt I felt relief. I really did, and it's I guess for me the question is how as African Americans culturally how did the verdict resound with you? Like what are the implications in that light?
John?
More, you know, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I think the Black population in this country is what, 13%?
13%.
Um, and so one case out of 13%. That's how I felt. Like, I think this case is very specific. I don't think it
Mhm.
is a symbol of anything else beyond Derek Chauvin being convicted and found guilty. I think everything else outside of that is an individual case on its own, especially since, there's no national law in this country of how police departments conduct itself.
Yeah.
And so,
And it's not over. I mean, he still has to
no,
be sentenced.
he still has to be sentenced.
He,
Although
he could
I'm
receive a light sentence and then, shit hits the
I'm
fan
not
then.
sure the mandatory sentencing guidelines are in Minnesota for those particular crimes.
Charges, yeah.
Um, I do think he will serve some time in jail,
Oh, it's no question.
um,
Yes.
but I don't think this case is going to be a catalyst for much outside of Minnesota. That's how I feel about it. Especially since when you think about, everything that we're learning about the law enforcement officers that participated in the insurrection on January 6th. We have a long way to go. We have a long way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it was something similar to what Van Jones and your boy Don Lemon were talking about. There's still a lot more to be done. Don Lemon said something
Yeah.
recently, right, Lizzie?
I'm sorry, say again?
Don Lemon said something controversial recently, didn't he?
No, so my issue with Don Lemon was that he was comparing this moment, when people were waiting
That's right.
for
Yeah.
verdict, Black people for a verdict, what was going to be the outcome of the verdict. And then when the verdict was announced and, the jubilation with that, he was comparing that moment to the O.J. Simpson verdict, which I just, found to be absolutely asinine, rude, obnoxious, and offensive.
Yeah.
OJ Simpson, whether OJ Simpson was found guilty or innocent, that had no reflection on the plight of Black people in this country and their relationship to being governed by police and their relationship to police brutality. OJ Simpson was a citizen who was married at one point, to Nicole Brown. He was an abusive husband, a lying, cheating husband. And a lot of Black people thought that he was guilty. A lot of Black people think, including myself, think that he got off. So to have this idea that we were all celebrating in the streets and that him being found not guilty had a bearing on our lives is just offensive, and it's just not true.
Yeah.
So for him to make that connection, I'm like, you need to put that pipe down. I know it's 420.
That pipe.
All day, Don Lemon, but let's not go there. It's offensive to not only myself, but to the Floyd family. Like, they have nothing to do with O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, it does
Absolutely
kind
nothing.
of belittle the situation.
I
So
can see how it's offensive. Yeah, that's
George Fournier said, I don't think it's appropriate for politicians to have spoken about the case or its verdict, not even Biden. Um, uh, Jacqueline Robinson says, Auntie Maxine should have chosen her words better. It would have been hypocritical to censor her under the circumstances. Kevin McCarthy, that's true, has several insurrectionist nutbags he refuses to do anything about. That's true. There are a bunch of, yeah, that's true. There's a lot of Republican Republicans in Congress that should have been censored if you were censoring her.
But let's not just deflect, just because Republicans said it over here,
That's
that,
true.
we should not,
Doesn't make it not wrong.
here. Like, let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe he didn't say fight
I'm in agreement
like
with you.
he did. However, she did say be confrontational. That is not acceptable for an elected official.
I agree.
Again, point blank, period.
I actually agree with you. I mean, it's not the same, but it is still, it's not acceptable.
And I know she's in her 80s. I know she's in her 80s, and we all love her. But Auntie Maxine is not above. She's not above reproach.
I agree. Mike Wolf says the other officers who were there get tried in August. We'll see what happens to them. Now, my question to you guys is, I mean, let's say, well, first off, they're not as likely to be convicted.
What are their? I don't know. I don't think I specifically know what their charges
I
are.
don't know that they have their full set of charges. I know they've been charged with something, but I don't know that they have their full set. I don't know. I don't know what their charges are.
I
But
mean, I could see dereliction of duty. Um, I could see depraved indifference. Um,
I mean,
Negligence.
but I could see them getting off. And
Me too.
would that affect? Do you think protests? Do you think the same way that Chauvin would? I mean, do you think that we'll see protests or riots or anything like that if the other three
I
officers get off?
I think it depends on what's going on in the country and what's going on in Minnesota. Like, you
I
know,
agree.
when is the officer who was responsible for Dante Wright? When is her trial coming up, or when is she going to be put before a judge? Like, it just depends on the climate of what's happening in Minnesota. Do I think those officers need to be charged with murder?
Mhm.
No.
Definitely depraved
I
indifference, possibly
definitely
manslaughter,
and dereliction of duty and all
Accessory.
accessory
accessory.
after the fact. Those things. And those are easier to convict on.
They can
Those
be.
are easier charges to convict on. But they didn't have the knee to the neck. So,
Mhm.
I feel like
but
if Chauvin had more charges, I think they would have convicted him.
I
I
will
mean,
say
because
though, like, let's
Yeah.
say, through, appeals process and, through a lot of bureaucratic crap that their trials get extended, or they may they may be offered a plea.
yeah,
That's something else that could be on the
I have a
table for
feeling they're
these.
still avoiding pleas right now. I mean, they got the main guy they wanted to get. Um, so I don't think they have anything to offer unless they have something on like other cops in Minnesota. Um, all right. Any other final thoughts before we move on?
I have a final thought. Um, I would say, even with everything that we saw within the past 24 hours as it relates to Derek Chauvin and um, having some level of accountability for George Floyd's murder, I think we need to be careful in how quick we are to jump to um, this was police brutality, or this was an immediate instance of a cop shooting an innocent Black person or innocent person in general, um, because not every case is like that.
Mm-hmm. True.
And
Mhm. Yeah.
it's very difficult to call something out within hours of an incident happening and say, okay, this cop should be vilified for XYZ. And then you get the footage, and then you start to get the real story. And it's like, oh, okay, so this is really what happened. So I think we just have to be careful. Everyone take a deep breath.
That's true. Because it actually
And
starts to diminish the efforts that we put
exactly.
into, you know, bringing light to these things. So if we're sitting up there, every single little thing that happens, we're making a big deal about it, and we're saying, "Hey, you see this, you see that," before we actually get the story. Right? It diminishes the value of the fight because when we find out
Um,
Are
later
there
that it's
examples are there specific things you guys are talking
I,
about?
I think the situation in Ohio is a perfect example of that. Because the initial story came out that the initial story was that a cop shot and killed an unarmed teenage girl in Ohio. And now that we saw the video footage, we're starting to hear more of what's coming out. None of that is true. She wasn't unarmed. She had a knife in her hand. She was about to stab someone
mm-hmm.
in the upper torso with that knife.
Did you hear
So
about that,
we,
Yanni, Robbie?
Yeah, I heard about
it's,
that.
it,
I
But I did hear all of the details as well. And I thought that it was wrongful. It was wrong on the police's part, but we got to bring this up again when we get more details.
No, I mean,
I would
what were you saying? What did you think was wrong? Was wrong on it, Yanni?
I think that from hearing the mother's testimony of the little girl that was killed by police, I think that there was a miscommunication because the girl had a knife in her hand, so it was she was being jumped by people from what I remember, and she looked like the aggressor, and so that's
that
I kind of
that
it's like I said, I don't have all the details.
Yeah, that made right. One, this young lady was in foster care. So she wasn't even in the care. She wasn't living with either her mother or her father. But if you look at this the slow motion version of the body cam, you will see that she was from what that shows when the cop from the cop's perspective, when he arrived, she, she was her. He arrived to the scene where she was on the ground with another male. I don't know who that male was, but she and another male were on the ground, seemingly attacking someone else, a young lady. And then the cop is saying, get down, get down. And she turns around to another bystander who's holding a dog. And that bystander did not appear, and I could be wrong because I didn't see before his body cam came on. But from that moment that he saw, the bystander in pink is a young lady that has on pink and she's holding a dog. She's not a part of any of the fracas. The victim turns around, pushes her up against a car, and is about to stab her. And that's when he
She
shoots.
got shot.
And so there's a lot that goes into it. It's a lot. And
Actually,
Yeah.
like you
another example is that DeAndre with the army sergeant, where the army sergeant was berating him. Now he certainly was racist in his berating of the child, but
Oh yeah, walking in the neighborhood.
when I'm getting more of the story beforehand. Apparently, DeAndre, the child, was actually put into he was institutionalized immediately following the incident. So there are
remember
reports
I said,
that he had attacked an
Yeah, you did say
animal
that, Liz.
and something and another child or something.
I'm not sure, like I don't know anything, and I don't think we would have been able to see any attack on his part,
No,
based on
there's no
when
video.
yeah, based on when it started to be recorded.
Hmm.
There was something about his demeanor that seemed a little off
Off.
to me.
Yep.
And so it doesn't surprise me, at least that they did an evaluation
Yep.
to see if this young man
Yeah.
was okay.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
that does not justify.
He still had a racist rant, and
That
the way he
justify
handled it. He assaulted him. So
yeah,
Horrible.
yeah, justify.
Pentland got what he deserved for the way he handled the situation. But the point is, when certain things start to come out, then it suddenly starts to diminish the actual
And it's understandable
fight.
because we're all on edge. We
We
are
are in that.
all on
Yep.
edge. We've
Yep.
seen this time and time
Yeah.
again. Um, so yeah.
All right.
So yeah.
Well, this was a tough, hot topic, very tough, hot topic. So I know, but we had good resolution. I was talking on Unscripted yesterday, and I was like, there was three major things that happened in 2021. One, we had COVID, then we had Trump, the election going on, and we had this George Floyd case, and we have two great resolutions so far. Um, got rid of Trump. Chauvin's in jail, hopefully forever. I mean, and then we got COVID getting better. So maybe we can say goodbye to 2021, and then some good things happening, some positive. So, all right, let's move on. Good hot topic, and thank you for interacting with us online, guys.
Truth, lies, shenanigans.
All right,